All right, we're gonna get started. Thank you all. This is a great turnout, and I hope you're ready with your questions afterwards. But we're very happy here to have Ray Miller hosting a session on our insurance challenges throughout the county. We have two panelists whose names I may or may not remotely right. Joel Lobster and Mary Beth Bykowski in the ballpark. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Ray, and then we're going to have two presentations and then questions after.
Good evening, everyone. I think it's coming up tonight. It's obviously a rainy Veterans Day evening. I have to say, I knew we'd have this many people. Fortunately, this is our third time doing this event, and we see these crowds around this issue. Fire insurance is obviously a huge issue here in Portola Valley and the Woodside area. We did this on the coast and had a packed room there too. And I want you to know tonight you're going to be presented with sort of the state of where the state is in terms of helping you in terms of what's available and answer questions about that. What I want you to know as well, what we're doing in here in the Board of Supervisors in my office is we've also reached out. The Board of Supervisors recently passed a resolution to go to the insurance commissioner and to the governor, really asking them to declare a state of emergency. Right now, what's happening is that the insurance commissioner and the governor have started on an ambitious process of rulemaking. But what we've heard from public policy think tanks is that even with that rulemaking process taking place, we're really looking at the 2026 time period for those reforms to be implemented. And what we're seeing in the county, and I'm sure what you guys will all share, is that we actually need action much faster than that. And so we're seeing this affecting our residential market. We're also seeing it now affecting our commercial market, where we're seeing people see increase in rates tremendously. People feel or no rates at all. People can't get insurance at all. And we see individuals who are so scared of this now they're starting to try to sell their homes. And it's really causing quite a bit of disruption. And so I'm very grateful for you all to be here this evening. I'm very grateful to our thought leader stakeholders who are here tonight to answer questions for you. And then if you want to, Mike O'Neill from my office is here sitting in the middle. If you could all give him a round of applause because he goes ahead and puts these together. And Kathleen Mosette is also in my office. So she did a lot of work on that emergency resolution. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and I've talked too long. I'm going to stand in the back, but when it's all done, if you wanted to come up and ask me any questions, if there's anything not even related to this topic, but if there's just anything that I can answer questions for you about the county, I'd be happy to do so. And I'll turn it over. Thank you.
I'm not quite as tall as he is, am I? Okay, so good evening, everybody, and thanks for the invitation to be here tonight. I'm going to start with an update on the insurance market, but right before that, I'm going to give you an idea of what the Department of Insurance does. CDI is the largest state consumer agency in the United States. It's the largest insurance market in the United States as well, and the third or fourth insurance market in the world. Okay, in 1988, as a result of Prop 103, the Office of the California Insurance Commissioner became an elected office, and the current commissioner is Ricardo Lara. So the department uses its authority to protect Californians from insurance rates that are excessive, inadequate, or unfairly discriminatory. We make sure that insurance companies have enough funds to pay their claims, and we set the standards for agent, broker, and licensing. We perform market conduct reviews of insurance companies to make sure they are compliant and in good standing, and we resolve consumer complaints. And we also investigate and prosecute insurance fraud. We have a team of over 300 investigators helping us in that regard. However, the one thing we cannot do is require or compel any insurance company to sell insurance to a particular person or community. Next slide, please. Oh, there you are. So let's talk about where we are today. We're all aware of the stress that the insurance market is under. It was created by natural disasters and global inflation. This is not just happening here, but every state is experiencing these factors. The increased cost for rebuilding, the supplies and materials all cost more, along with the labor shortages, among other costs, are affecting the markets. Reinsurance is harder to find, and once again, that costs more as well. And as we've seen, as the risk rises, the insurance companies are pulling back to make sure that they can keep up their obligation to their current consumers and limiting new business and pulling back even more. Next slide, Mike. Even though some insurance companies are currently still selling homeowners insurance in certain markets, 12 insurance companies control 85% of the California insurance market. So think about that. If one of those companies really struggles, the impact really filters down. Next slide. And since 2022, 7 of those top 12 insurance groups have paused or restricted writing new business despite rate increases approved or pending with the department. And I'm sure you're aware that State Farm has chosen to non-renew 30,000 homeowners policies within certain zip codes this summer. So this clearly is a problem that is complex and global in nature. It's affecting all of us and cannot be solved by raising prices alone. Next slide. So let me ask, how many people here are on the FAIR plan? Okay, so I don't know if you all know about the FAIR plan, but it has doubled to more than 4% of the market, becoming the insurer of first resort, not the insurer of last resort as it was designed. The FAIR plan is not a state agency. It is run and funded by the insurance companies. And the policyholders are required to pay more for less coverage. The FAIR plan only covers fire, lightning, smoke, and internal explosions. So homeowners who are on the FAIR plan must also purchase a difference in conditions policy to have the full coverage of an HO3 policy. And as a result of the growing risk concentration in California, the credit agency AM Best has downgraded outlooks for top 12 companies like State Farm, AAA, and Mercury. Insurance companies will not write in high-risk areas unless they can cover 100% of consumers' claims, pay their expenses, and earn a fair return. Rate filings are also more complex and they take longer sometimes than 6 months to review. And also one entity can prolong a rate filing and no other state allows this. Prices have increased nationally, so our goal is to get back to the point where companies are once again competing for your business. California's rates right now are in the middle of the average of the country, believe it or not. But risk here does continue to increase to the point where insurance is becoming unaffordable for some, and we do recognize that. But as I said earlier, unfortunately, unlike public utilities, which are required to provide coverage to all residents and businesses under Prop 103, insurance companies can legally refuse to write insurance. Everyone is harmed if an insurance company goes insolvent if it cannot pay its claims. And we are here to make sure that does not happen. Next slide. To reduce the risk of major losses in the industry, we developed the Safer from Wildfires framework. That's been out for about 18 months now. Most of you have heard about this. Do most of you know about it? Okay, great. So I'm just going to give you a real brief overview about it. It's a 3-step system to protect your home, your surroundings, and the community, which in turn provides consumers with discounts and transparency about your risk ratings. Next slide. Step 1, pretty straightforward. Your Class A roof, your fire ember resistant zone around the structure, your closed eaves, your fire resistant vents, which I am just getting this month. Your multi-pane windows or shutters that close, and a minimum of 6 inches of non-combustible vertical clearance at the bottom of the exterior surface of the structure. Next slide. Step 2, protect the immediate surroundings. These are all pretty common sense. Clear the vegetation and debris from under your decks and remove all combustible materials from within 5 feet of the structure. Remove all your structures, sheds, and other outbuildings from the immediate surroundings to as far away as 30 feet. If you don't have 30 feet, please put it as far away as possible in your yard. And of course, trim your trees and remove your brush in compliance with both state and local ordinances. Next slide. And finally, step 3 is an effort to obtain a community level designation. This usually involves at least one, if not more, local government agencies like CAL FIRE or OES, such as the FireWise USA's, sites in good standing, and something new called the Fire Risk Reduction Community. Next slide. So when you do the mitigation steps, your insurance company will provide you with a discount. The FAIR plan has offered a 10% discount on policies in participating FireWise communities since May of 2018. In August of last year, they also began offering 2 new hardening discounts, one for protecting the structure and another for protecting the immediate surroundings of the dwelling. When applied, these discounts will reduce the wildfire portion of the policy premium by 10 and 5% respectively, for a total of 14.5%. Homeowners, if they've done all this work, should contact their broker to find how to qualify. Now, they've structured it a little bit differently. The Safer from Wildfires regulation, you got a discount for everything that you've done separately. Admittedly, if a lot of you have done that, discounts have been very small. FAIR Plan has really stepped up, I think, as far as how much of a discount that they are offering, but they have there's a contingent on bundling you do with all of those. So if you want the home hardening discount, you have to do all of the items listed, and the same thing for the property. Okay. Additionally, CBI and the California FAIR Plan reached an agreement to increase the commercial coverage limit up to 20 million per location last November, and they also increased the business owner's policy increased up to $20 million as well. Another really important aspect of Safer from Wildfires regulation is for the first time, insurers have to give you your wildfire risk score if you live near the WUI. Okay, so the risk score classification must be provided to you at 4 different times. Within 15 days of when you apply for a new policy, at least 45 days before you renew a policy, and at least 75 days before you are non-renewed, and within 30 days of when you complete new mitigation and ask for an update. So if you know what they're digging you for, you can take some action to try to make your the risk lower and get that discount. Okay, so that's one misconception. So right now you have 75 days if you are non-renewed. Well, Joel, I'm sure will be speaking about steps to take to go get that policy and, you know, little tips to help them in that regard. Next slide. The governor's executive order last September led the commissioner to expedite another package of regulatory solutions. He introduced the California Sustainable Insurance Strategy. It's a comprehensive plan to modernize the insurance market. The goals are to increase availability insurance in wildfire distressed areas. Using our prior approval rate authority, insurance companies will write no less than 85% of homes and businesses in wildfire distressed areas. Now, this is a historic agreement between the department and the insurance companies, and it will reverse the trend of a growing FAIR Plan and close the insurance gap, and return FAIR Plan holders back to a traditional insurance. That's our goal. The department will define these distressed areas using a data-driven approach. The next important element, the department introduced the use of forward-looking catastrophe modeling. We call that CAT modeling. What we're gonna do then is let the insurance companies use computer models to gauge the risk. We're the only state in the nation right now that does not allow that. As four major benefits for consumers. The first is more reliable rates. Insurance consumers will see more sustainable costs than under the current regulations. Insurance companies will increase riding because they can better anticipate future losses rather than non-renewing higher risk policyholders or pausing riding altogether. CAT models can capture the benefit of the wildfire mitigation, encouraging and rewarding those efforts. And the final consumer benefit is the stronger oversight by the department. Models are already being widely used by insurance companies outside of rate making and across the nation, and we will have access to these models so California continue to lead in this process. And we have already received notice from Allstate that if and when this regulation occurs, they will start writing policies in California again. Farmers, which is the second largest homeowners commercial rider in the state, has reopened its condo and apartment coverage. And we followed the template we used as we did in the Safer from Wildfires regulation. We took input from the public. We had a number of public hearings and we were listening. People could write in their comments or come speak during these hearings and give their thoughts. And another important element of stabilizing the marketplace in the face of climate change, we also are exploring allowing California-only reinsurance. It's a tool that insurance companies use to help manage their climate risk and continue writing policies. We want to underscore that Californians will not pay the cost of hurricane and floods across the nation around the world, but only capture those costs that are incurred here in California. Under this agreement, companies wishing to use these new risk model assessments must agree to increase and maintain their writing in the wildfire distressed areas of the state. That's the 85% requirement, and increase writing and removing people from the family. Next slide, please. This is a preliminary map of the distressed counties that have been drawn up. The light colored counties are the counties that are going to be looked at first. Based on data we have as far as how many people there, how many homes are on a FAIR plan, we've highlighted those counties. The distressed zip code, we also have a list of zip codes with a higher rate of penetration of the FAIR plan. That's a 15% rate of FAIR plan in those areas, and the counties is 20%. Thirdly, we know there are pockets of properties on the FAIR plan that are outside of these distressed zones and outside of these counties and zip codes, but that are still rated with wildfire risk, and we're hoping to get an extra 5% of insurance written in those pockets. Next slide. We have a number of tools on our website to help you scour the marketplace for insurance. Our home insurance finder tool can help you identify the insurance companies in your region and throughout the state. We have contact numbers for all the insurance companies. We have the top 10 tips that will help you the most. And Joel wrote those while he was with the department, so he will be speaking about that next. Next slide. If you have any questions about any line of insurance, or if you need to file a complaint, please call us and file a complaint, or if you need help. Our hotline is manned by compliance officers. They are the only ones that can go into your policy. And if you want them to, you would fill out a request for assistance, and they pretty much act as your advocate. You'd be given a case number and would work through the process just to make sure that whatever the complaint is, that the insurance company's acting in the rules of our regulations. And we have a 2-minute callback rate as well.
Does that include calling California FAIR plan or just?
Both, yeah. And if you call, everything gets, all the data is saved. I know going out speaking to communities like this, I'll go back to the office on Monday, we'll have our meeting and I'll talk to, our group, and we'll say, this is what we're hearing, are you hearing this or that? And it'll go up the chain. But once we have the actual raw data that X amount of people, the population is calling, this is happening, we can track those trends better, right? And it it leaves more of an impact. Okay, and that's the presentation. I think we're taking questions after. Okay. Is that right? Yeah.
I mean, if people wanna have questions.
Yeah, I'll find that
on it. Gonna maybe use the microphone, no, I'm sorry. Everybody has the,
Hello? Hopefully this is a real quick question. The regulation, the rulemaking that, has been referenced, what is the timeline to get that done and actually have this happen?
Our goal is to have our end of it done by the end of this year. But that means having this regulation approved. Then after that, what comes across is the insurance companies will have to submit new rates. Then we'll have the whole process of rate approvals. Our rate approvals historically have been pretty slow, but we've already, the governor's funded our department a little bit more. We have hired and trained more regulators to help come up with those rates or approve the rates. So we're trying to shorten that. And we're also expecting the insurance companies to do their part as well, because sometimes they don't give, they don't submit a complete package. And it could be months before we get all the information. So, they want to sell insurance. We are the largest market in the United States. So as long as it's safe and they're not losing money, they would love to come back. No, but there was an article, what was it? I think it was in New York Times, and they were talking about how they feel their research that the rest of the country is helping support California's rates. They had a story of 2 states with a river between them, and on one state that their commissioner didn't do anything about regulation, and the homeowners found out they were paying more than double than right across the border with this, in the same kind of environment. So it really is a mismatch, or a mismatch.
Hi, same question about cancellations. So State Farm announced, I think last spring, that we're going to cancel 73,000 policies in the state of California. They have 20% market share of the property market in California. I have State Farm. I spoke to my agent, probably 6-8 weeks ago, and asked him about an update on these cancellations. He said that he wasn't authorized to speak on behalf of State Farm, but basically they were rolling off 100% of their multifamily policies in the coming year. Have you heard that, and can you confirm that?
100%?
100% of multifamily policies will be rolled off in this year.
I don't know about that. Oh, yeah. And the 70,000 that they non-renewed, not canceled, because there is a difference between canceling and non-renewing. That was commercial and not just homeowners.
Thank you for your excellent presentation. It seems to me like this is a national problem. Obviously, we don't want to be paying for the hurricanes in Florida, but it seems to me the whole concept of insurance is shared risk.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like because of that issue, a national solution is going to be required, because as bad as things are in California, they're even worse in Florida. So is the state insurance commissioner part of any sort of national effort to make this a national solution? Because it seems to me that's the only thing that will really work, is to share the expenses and the risk across the country. Thank you.
I don't really know what the commissioner is talking about that. That's below my pay grade. That's
Very much about it. The state commission work together and try to create model laws that are adopted nationwide or address issues in some level of consistent manner nationwide. But as you might imagine, some along the same lines as we just saw the country break up on voting, there are areas that have a lot more regulation and in areas that have very little insurance regulation. And so it would be a huge leap forward for many states to get to where we are, but many of them want to do so. Colorado, just a couple of years ago, major catastrophe fires, didn't have any of the claims protections that we do, and rate protections. And now, of course, they're working to create all those things. So, you know, in the end, of course, as a leader, a national standard would probably mean compromising what we have. But for most states, of course, having anything near what we have would be a huge step forward. I don't see there being a national standard for many of the things we talked about here, rate making or claims handling. But you know, there are certainly a number of laws where there is consistency. So maybe, you know, we'll get closer together over time.
A quick question, that presentation was great. Is it possible for us to get a copy of your slide deck?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
If you have any data on how has impacted development and in particular our affordable housing goals in California, do you have anything you can speak to about that?
Just homeowners associations are among the most hardest hit through this insurance issue, and that's because there is so much in value in risk in a homeowners association. So if insurers are concerned about, you know, too many $1 million dwellings in one given vicinity, they're more concerned when there's a 8-building homeowners association all at risk to a single catastrophe. So likely, you know, some of the affordable housing, which tends to be in some communities, larger buildings, new building codes to allow for more units or more height, are going to have insurance issues, certainly, unless the state picks up some of those costs as well, the county or whoever is behind the construction.
And just to follow up on this gentleman's question and comment, I would say, actually, we Californians already pay for flood insurance in places that are impacted by hurricanes. So about 60 years ago, as particularly political power started movement towards Florida, there was a program put in place called the National Flood Insurance Program. And it is administered by FEMA. It is the only way people get flood insurance anywhere in the country today, and it's particularly localized in places that have hurricane risk. And so right now, there's about 1.5 trillion of residences value that is covered by flood insurance. It's the only thing that actually works, and it's a program that has 50 insurers in the program. I believe California is going to have the same kind of catastrophic risk going forward. And I think the only thing is truly going to be, even though we're the world's largest market today, I actually do think that it is not going to have to require a national approach. So to the extent that there's any voices here that actually have a voice towards state, well, actually, no, our representatives in Washington, I've heard all of us actually use that voice, because today California is the single biggest donor state, meaning that we collectively, of the taxes that we pay the federal government, we get 78 cents back out of every dollar. So then we are the biggest donor state. So we are already subsidizing flood insurance that is a result of catastrophic risk from primarily hurricanes. So I just want to make that point. I understand that's not specifically your role, but you do have a voice, particularly at places that can make a difference in Washington.
So I want to,
Remind.
I'll get two more, but then I want to make sure we have time for the second presentation, so. I know things have come and go, you know, I hear things like that, those ideas, but until they're written in law. And in today's climate, I don't know if anybody's gonna be helping out California much. Well, sorry.
So question, you mentioned reinsurance. Do you talk to the big reinsurers like Swiss Re and Munich Re? Okay, like what's their view of this?
Well, they're not really happy about it because it takes a lot of work for them to remove and isolate what are the California reinsurance rates. But it looks like that's what's going to happen.
This will be the last one we'll have a presentation.
So in the deal that's being negotiated by the insurance commissioner for this, basis for rate setting, the insurers would have to agree to insure 85%. There was the number of areas, so-called distressed areas. What's the vision for the other 15%? Why 85% not?
Well,
So
I
what's the
think
logic here?
what we're looking at is those are the hardest hit areas, and if those stresses come down and those risks comes down and their losses come down, it'll probably benefit all of the state. And then it would be a more of a, I hate to say trickle down insurance, but.
Yeah, I think some of those properties are probably going to end up, stay in the fair plan, essentially. So the goal is, it's 85% of the insurer's market share. Because I know we hear 85%, it's like if State Farm had 10% of the market, they'd have to write 8.5% of the at-risk market, right? They'd have to take back that percentage. I think the idea is the remaining risk is probably just not going to be anything that any admitted insurer is going to want to write. So those 15% of the areas that are at high risk will either stay in the fair plan or will be written by surplus lines insurers at very high premiums.
So it's envisioned that the fair plan will continue.
Yes,
Mhm.
I don't think there's any idea of the fair plan going away. The idea is just to try to depopulate it significantly. But it will still be there. And we're lucky to have a fair plan. A lot of states do not have a fair. So another reason to be happy to live in California.
All right, Joe?
Despite yes. Okay, I will start. I'm Joel Launcher. I work for United Policyholders, which is a nonprofit. We'll go to the next slide, please. Roll up my PDF. Oh, there it is. Fair intervention. So United Policyholders is a nonprofit that kind of made its name by assisting people after catastrophe losses, a lot of wildfire losses. United Policyholders shows up to help people walk through the claims process. Imagine it's pretty challenging if you live in a community that has lost a major share of its homes. Dealing with insurers who are flooded with claims is a difficult undertaking while you're renting somewhere else. I will say the reason I work for United Policyholders now, after 35 years with the Department of Insurance, is because I also attended or went to many of these locations on behalf of the department to help people through the claims process. And just so admired how great a job United Policyholders did assisting people that I'm grateful to get to work for them now in my retirement years, we'll say. Next slide, please. So we know premium increases are flowing out into the public right now. State Farm had a rate increase pending for quite a while, 20% on average. But that 20%, again, on average, does not roll out evenly to every zip code or every homeowner's policy, of course. I went through their rate filing and noted that for Portola Valley, that 20% on average was 29.3% on average, meaning somebody probably in Portola Valley got a 50% increase and maybe somebody got a 20% increase. But these are the on averages. They flow out different to different regions. And just to make you not feel so bad, I put Big Sur on there so that you can imagine, and that's on average too, right? So somebody there probably had their premium double, while somebody else only got a 25% increase. That lucky soul. State Farm has another rate increase pending, so they're backing it up with yet another one. And Allstate has a 30% increase pending. Many insurers have double-digit increases pending. Insurers didn't really used to file anything above about a 6.9%, because at 7%, a consumer group could intervene and demand a hearing. They can still intervene, but they just can't demand a hearing if insurers come in under 7%. But in this market, insurers are just kind of throwing up the gates and coming in for double-digit rate increases. And so, you're seeing the premiums obviously rise up to levels you never would have imagined just a few years ago. So how do they determine who pays a little more and who pays a little less? Well, we're talking about rate risk models that are used in rate making. That's one kind. And the other are risk models they use for evaluating risk. So here's in an area, anybody ever hear of Bear Gulch Drive or Alpine Road? Coincidentally, I use that slide. And so what I'm portraying here is the wildfire risk scores that have started coming out maybe a little over a decade ago. Take satellite imagery and look at a property and determine from the data the slope of that house where it is sitting, its degree of access, how wide the roads are to get there, how close the fire departments are, and how much fuel load, either brush or forestry, is nearby that home, and they give it a score. And that score is used to determine both eligibility and your rate level, right? So one part of it is if you make the cut, then you can get coverage. But if you have a fairly high score, you're going to pay more. We didn't have that 15 years ago. Insurers used your protection class, for example, and your zip code, your territory. And that's as far as most of the evaluations went. But we're getting, I'll say, a lot more granular in the data to home in on specifics about the home. So next slide, please. And to further exhibit that, I just mentioned this last slide was based on satellite imagery. Now the imagery insurers uses aerial imagery, and they get a much more detailed look at the home. So this home, which might have a very nice Class A roof, which insurers like, also has a very obvious problem that insurers don't like. Anybody see what that is? Tree limbs crossing out over the roof line, right? That, for a lot of insurers, would be enough to non-renew this home the next time renewal came up. It will definitely impact the score of this home in terms of both eligibility and rating. And, it's probably, maybe that's a beautiful oak tree, and you'd hate to limit up at that roof line. But this is the reality of insurance. It's kind of like they used to say for some drug, shingles doesn't care. Well, insurance doesn't care, right? They don't care about your beautiful oak tree. They just care about those limbs going over the roof. And in this granular data that they get today, what they combine that with is they also have databases about the age of your home. From the age of your home, they know what kind of vents you have, for example, whether you have ember-resistant vents. And so that automatically goes into the calculus. And that's why, because ember-resistant vents are one of the mitigation actions that will get you a discount, you need to tell your insurer when you've done that. A, to get your discount, and B, it can help your score when insurers are looking at which homes to keep and which homes they don't want to keep or they want to non-renew. So, unfortunately, insurers are right up in your business in a sense at your home. And they're able to tell a lot about the, defensible space about your home. Next slide, please. I won't go over the discounts because they were all already pointed out. There's a set for the home. There's a set for the landscape around the home. I think the one that people complain about the most is the enclosed eaves. If you know, the eaves are, of course, where your roof line hangs over the front of your home or all the way around your home. They want those enclosed so that heat doesn't gather up in there. Most eaves, actually, for any home built in the 60s are not enclosed. So that's kind of an expensive fix. But most of the other things are pretty approachable. And as to vents, I did mine myself by buying a new tighter weave mesh and just wrapping my old vents in that new finer mesh to make them ember resistant. So you want to do all of those you can, because they can, of course, help eligibility, not just about discounts. Next slide, please. So if you get a non-renewal, what should you do? As Mary Beth mentioned, they have to give you a significant notice, 75 days. And 75 days can go by pretty fast. So you're going to want to get right on it. And what is the on it you're going to get on? Both shopping for replacement coverage and doing whatever, maybe addressing whatever issue the insurer identified as the reason you are being non-renewed, right? So if it's because you have a wood shingle roof, if you can get that wood shingle roof replaced within 75 days, in my opinion, legally, the insurer would have to renew you. I don't know if the department has been enforcing that so much or whether insurers have accepted that reality. But in my view, if it would be unfairly discriminatory to not renew you if you have taken care and removed the thing that they identified as the hazard and the reason they won't renew you. So you want to get on it. And, if you can fix the issue, which sometimes you can, but often you can't, because it's just broadly a risk score or the fact that they have an over concentration of homes in the area and they no longer want to write that much in value. But if you can fix it, get on it. The other thing you want to do is get on the phone or the computer and start seeing if you can find another insurer. It's going to take a while. You can't just simply ask your local agent, well, can you place me somewhere, and then give up when they say, I can't, but I can put you in the fair plane. You may end up there. And I'm going to say, I'm going to encourage you to shop around, but admit that I may be sending you on a wild goose chase, depending on, how at risk your property is. People are getting new coverage in this market, but that may not be you at your home, or you may not find that insurer. It is very rough to find new coverage today, but it's still worth the effort because the fair plan is not a good place to be. As a lot of people here may already know, they charge probably more than your homeowner's policy cost just for the fire peril. And I'll tell you, their claims handling process is not so good. Hopefully you never learn about that. But, and then of course you have to buy the difference in conditions policy. So you want to do everything you can to avoid that combination. Next slide, please. So the common reasons for non-renewal: age of home, age of roof, galvanized pipes, knob and tube wiring. Many of these are things that you could address. And so I hope, if you get the opportunity, I think you would find in the long run, despite some of these being very, kind of expensive things to do, knob and tube wiring really only still exists in some of the older Victorians in the Bay Area, but it has become a real concern for insurers lately, who kind of ignored that there were still some existing homes with that kind of wiring. But these are things, it would cost a lot, of course, to get a new roof, 20, 30, 40,000, but that it's still going to both make you more likely to find additional coverage. It's most important that you're actually making your home safer. That is the key. So hopefully I think the day of wood shingles are gone. So again, do all you can in that 75 days, or if you end up in the FAIR plan, you want to try to get out of there, right? There's nothing that stops you from doing another market search every few months, whenever you can build up the stamina to go through all the negativity of it again, right? With the possibility it won't work out again. But don't resign yourselves necessarily to being a lifelong member of the FAIR Plan Club, right? Try to get out of there if you can. Next slide, please. Yes.
Question about the slide.
Last slide.
35,000 gallons of fertilizer swimming pool.
Mhm.
So how was that house non?
How is having water in your swimming pool grounds for non-renewal? Yeah, for some insurers, they do not want to insure. It's not a fire risk. It is a life and hazard risk. So there are some that are that kind of conservative about injuries or.
What's the issue with galvanized pipes? Now, you have to have those for, you need some type of galvanized or iron for gas, and you can have copper for water.
Yeah, this is just, again, some insurers are picking out, and it's a lot of homes have galvanized pipes that aren't a concern, but it's insurers typically when there's been a leak or something at the home and they actually somebody makes a claim, they find out, well, this system, the galvanized pipes that'll last another 100 years and galvanized pipes that have a lot of rust and issues with them. So if an insurer finds that that is the issue at your home, often they don't want to renew. So after fire loss, water damage is the second most common expensive claim that insurers deal with. And so they're always worried about plumbing. I had a president of a company tell me once his least favorite thing was that homes were built with the washing machine upstairs in a 2-bedroom home, right? Because something goes awry and it busts it's the roof of the floor below. And so plumbing and electrical have become bigger issues. Interesting, back to the knob and tube, the concern there with the wiring is in San Francisco, there is the concern, obviously you have an earthquake and that does damage, but the bigger hazard can be the fire following the earthquake, which is insured by every policy. And of course, knob and tube wiring more likely to lead to uncontrolled sparks. So.
insurance anyone, the less likely they'd like to insure.
Yeah, a lot of insurers have cut off and, just to, to give you a sense, obviously, how values have built. Just a couple of years ago, in the good old days, if you got a renewal notice, the only thing you'd look at was the premium. Oh my gosh, this is such a ripoff. And you don't notice, if you have a $800,000 limit, well, that's going to be like $1.6 million in values at risk. So generally, whatever your dwelling amount is, double that for how much the insurer has at risk. Because your dwelling is the kind of the lead note, but you'll get 50% of that limit for contents, right? And another percentage of that limit for additional living expense, and another percentage of that limit for building code upgrade. So when you total it up, it tends to be about double whatever the exposure for the insurer is, double whatever the building limit is. And that's why insurers start to get concerned. And some of that is based on limitations within the reinsurance as well, right? That more spread of value to them means cheaper reinsurance. In California, currently, we don't allow them to claim their reinsurance costs in the premium they charge you. So that's an issue. So next slide. And maybe, Mary Beth already went over it. They have to be giving you your scores, explain your scores. You may be able to protest your score, but I'd say generally it's unlikely that you will be right about that. Sometimes there's very little you can do about your score of your home, but this is a reason that we need community actions, shaded fuel breaks, controlled burns, things like that can actually start to impact the density of brush or forest near your home and actually make an impact. Next slide, please. Oh, yeah, okay. I use the same slide. Here's Mary Beth. Couple of this is a web page from the department. Gives several helpful components of things you can do, but the top 10 tips is for finding insurance coverage. I'd go there. Home insurance finder. Again, you can put in details of your home and try and find an insurer there. It's just another way to give it a go if you get a non-renewal notice. Next slide, please. One of the pages that top 10 tips leads you to is the 800 number of every admitted insurer that writes homeowners in California. So there are probably many of them you haven't heard of. Aspen America or Tokyo Marine or American Modern Home. These are not companies that write big percentages of our risk in California. You may have a shot with some of them. Again, wild goose chase, but if you have nothing to lose but the possibility of getting out of the fair plan and you have an afternoon to kill, call the 800 number of each of these insurers, work your way down the list, ask if they will either give you a quote directly or refer you to one of their closest agents if they have one nearby or wherever they are, right? You can call an agent in Los Angeles and see if you can find coverage. I'll say right now, it's a complete waste of your time, but what if it isn't? We really don't know. Some of these insurers are writing homes that somehow people connected with them and found coverage. So my previous insurer, I'm now with Travelers, but was with Wawanesa Insurance. Anybody know Wawanesa? One of the best deals around that you can get with Wawanesa, both for your home and your auto. And they don't pay me a cent to say any of those words. Yes.
Who says those
These are all admitted insurers. So they are vetted by the Department of Insurance. That's number one. And because they are admitted insurers, they're also backed by the California Insurance Guarantee Association. So their claims, maybe up to $1 million, I don't know, maybe it's a higher number now, would be paid even if they went insolvent. Admitted insurers, because they are thoroughly vetted by the department's financial staff as well as their home state's staff. Admitted insurers are a lot more reliable financially than a potential surplus lines insurer. That's why I'll just mention this since we're on the topic. Surplus lines insurers, those that don't have an 800 number here, the only protection you have with them is their financial strength. So you always want to see what their rating is. A lot of people turn to a BEST rating, it's called. It's a financial measurement of insurers' financial strength. You want at least a B+ rating or better. If you're taking a C rating, the insurer could go insolvent. And if that does happen for a non-admitted carrier, you're just out of luck, basically. We did have one of our admitted insurers go bankrupt up in Paradise. They had just overcommitted up there and written a lot of homes, and their claims were paid through the California Guarantee Association. So it's a real great reason why you want to be with an admitted carrier. Next slide, please. Okay, tips to save money. So many of you may still have your same insurer, and maybe if you're like me, when I got my coverage 20 years ago, I said, $500 deductible, wow, that's a whole lot of money. I hate to have that much at risk, but okay. And then I left it there, for the next 20 years because you just pay your renewal. Today's market, you really want to look at increasing that, deductible if you've been sitting on one for a long time, like I did, to be something, a lot closer to $5,000 or $10,000, or an amount that you're willing to, weather yourself without using your insurer, which has, not only its benefit there, but obviously most of us never do have a claim. And so, might as well carry a higher deductible. So there we go. It's almost as if I wrote it myself on that slide. I did. So again, these are the types of carriers admitted, right? Backed by California Insurance Guarantee Association, non-admitted, rates aren't approved. You have to rely on a financial review of them to get a rating. Government created the FAIR Plan. The FAIR Plan is backed by, and if the FAIR Plan went broke, used up all of its reserves, paying a catastrophic loss, it would do an assessment from all the admitted insurers to be able to raise the money to pay its claims. It is a reason admitted insurers are cautious about writing so much business now. It's one of the kind of downsides, right, to being an admitted insurer is as the FAIR Plan's exposure grows, your exposure as an insurer to be on the hook should the FAIR Plan blow through its surplus, it gets higher. So it's in everybody's best interest to depopulate the FAIR Plan. Next slide, please. Am I getting too much detail? We can stop. Okay. Would you ever have thought you'd listen to an insurance department on a holiday evening? Yes. It's tough times. So as Margaret mentioned, the FAIR Plan itself is really just that fire, smoke coverage. You need a difference in conditions policy. The FAIR Plan's so expensive that you're going to think, I don't think I want to pay any more. But as I mentioned, water damage claims are a huge issue and can cost thousands. And while liability claims are fairly rare in insurance, they can be major losses, right? If you're not insured, somebody trips and falls and hurts themselves on your property, you are going to want to have liability insurance. So, you know, if you can afford it, you definitely want to pair a difference in conditions policy with your fair plan policy, even though it's quite a financial burden. There are multiple companies that write difference in conditions policy. So don't just assume, okay, we couldn't find another homeowner's insurance carrier. I'm in the fair plan. I'll just let my agent place my DIC policy, difference in conditions policy. You want to shop those too, because there's a difference in the cost for DIC policies. Next slide, please. Okay, I just said all these things. Next slide, please. Okay, under insurance, we're talking right now about how expensive insurance is, right? Who wants to spend more on it? Nobody. But you know, there's a reason you buy it. And unfortunately, I can tell you from a lot of places I've been sent by the department and by the fair plan where people have had major losses and they all wish they were fully insured to value. There's a reason you buy insurance. It is to avoid being in a situation where you cannot rebuild your home or even come close to it because you are significantly underinsured. And we find almost everywhere, almost everyone is underinsured. So even in these times of high premiums, at least get your limit up to the range of reasonable, right? Maybe you don't want to, make sure you're well insured to pay anything, but you do want to kind of be able to approximate rebuilding a home that you will want to live in. I will tell you, insurers are obligated to send you an estimate of the cost to rebuild your home every other year. And you'll get this, sometimes very detailed description of, how much labor and materials, overhead and profit, demolition and debris removal, permits and architect's plans. That's because the Department of Insurance requires them to give that much detail. But despite how official and convincing it looks, you might find that the amount equates to something like $400 a square foot to rebuild your home. And I will say probably anywhere in the Bay Area, you are not going to build anything close to the homes we have around here today for $400 a square foot. So just take a look, obviously if you had a 2,000 square foot home, you would need a $800,000 limit at $400 a square foot. So if you're somewhere around that size of home, you want to make sure you're up there closer to $1 million limit. So maybe you don't want to do that today, but keep it in mind. You really do want your coverage to take care of you if it ever happens. And it happens to people every single year. It's happened to a bunch of people in Ventura County this very week. Next slide, please. Okay, another thing, just to help on this, again, on the claim side, inventory your personal property. And by that, I mean, do the simple task of taking your phone and doing a walkthrough of your home, videoing all of your belongings. That means opening closets and cabinets and drawers, just to have evidence of what you own. Now, if you ever are at a site where there's been a catastrophe and you've come to understand how an insurer pays out the contents portion of the claim, they make you list the item that you are claiming, how much you paid for it, when you bought it, and what condition it was currently in for every single item in your home that you want to claim, right? And I bet many of you own dozens of things, right? So you really want to make it easier on yourself, A, to remember those things, but actually simply having that level of evidence can make it a lot easier that the insurer will waive a lot of those details and pay out your claim if, for example, if you've had a total loss. Hopefully you'll never ever need to do this, ever. But it only takes a few minutes to do this step, and it can mean hundreds of hours of an easier claims handling situation if you do it. So it's insurance. It never was fun. Okay. And Mary Beth mentioned the insurance department's doing a sustainable insurance strategy. That's going to kind of align California a little more with some of the realities of what insurance companies deal with. They have reinsurance costs, and in pretty much any other state, they use catastrophe models to project what their possible losses are, looking at the insurer's book of business, and load those potential losses into the rate making. Here we just do an average of historical loss. So those two changes are coming to California. They are going to mean much higher premiums. So this is the quid pro quo of getting more availability in California. We are going to see a lot higher costs. In fact, I think one of the reasons insurers are kind of putting in all these rate filings now, back to back to back, is because they want to get as much of the rate in place now, but there's going to be more. This is what availability is going to cost in California, a lot more premium. So otherwise insurers, and none of them really are going to probably want to change what they're doing in the market until these regulations are locked in and insurers are guaranteed that money's going to be flowing their way. So I'm sorry to say, if this presentation was already depressing, there's more. So sorry, but a reality, and you need to know. I hope if you could take the time to take our survey about the insurance market. Again, I work for a nonprofit. I didn't charge you a thing for this wonderful presentation, and maybe you got what you paid for, but you also got to hear Mary Beth, so you got a bonus. And so all we ask is you take our survey, check out our website. We have a lot of helpful information there. And you know, I don't mean to make light of any of this situation, but I know it's rough to go hear insurance presentations on any given evening. Thank you for being here, and check out uphelp.org.
I have some feelings. So thank you all for coming out on Veterans Day evening, to be depressed, but educated. This is not a local issue, but it's something that's affecting every one of us, and that's why I was very happy when I contacted Supervisor Mueller's office, and they had already given a presentation elsewhere that was very relevant to things I was hearing. And I really want to thank Joel for the overview, and do take his survey. But let's open it up for questions. I'm gonna try, I mean, if you can really project, that will come, but I'd rather try to record some of the questions. That's why I'm making people use the microphone. So I'll start here and wind around. Just a quick question. So that website, insurance.ca.gov, if you put your information in, is it captured? And where does it go if you just wanted to check out your possibility of another insurance? Is that information captured and then sent on and haunts you forever?
Yeah, I think when you look at the place you might put it in is that, the list of insurers, the insurance finder. And I think it only would show you what insurers would come up. It's not gonna contact an agent or anything like that, I think for you. So I don't know that any data goes away once entered somewhere, but I don't think the Department of Insurance is capturing that, other than how many users access the site. Is my thought.
Okay, towards the end of your presentation, you said that once these changes are made by insurance companies in the state of California, the cost of insurance is going to go up. So is it going to go up higher than the FAIR plan plus DIC? Do you think?
I'm gonna, my thought is no. The FAIR plan already does use modeled losses. Unlike the admitted insurers. So that already, has taken them into that stratosphere. But the FAIR plan does not have reinsurance costs. So it's a bit of a gamble, I guess. But my belief is ultimately the admitted market will be less than the FAIR plan and DIC combo.
Thank you.
Just real quick though, the whole idea of Sacred for Wildfires is for us to do our work for our homes and our communities. Because let's face it, the rates aren't really gonna go down until the risk goes down. So this is in our hands. And I know other things are happening in the forest. There's AI technology out there now. You could see smoke before it could be smelled, or before the fireman is sitting in front of a computer looking at a screen. Some of the fire stations within the forest actually are notified as soon as AI picks up smoke. So there is a lot of work out there that's happening behind the scenes that will be making us safer.
We just had a fire in the Oakland Hills that probably could have grown to the size of the Oakland fire had not so many resources arrived within minutes. So
this is more of a general kind of town-wide question. We've had a lot of concern over the years about adopting a fire map, and we're worried that our rates would increase. If we admit it, it seems a little silly, and I'm just wondering now, do you think it's a moot point? Because it sounds like the insurer can just do it already. They're already figuring it out. They're not gonna be looking at what Patrol Valley does for their own fire, hazard map. Or is there another reason we might want to adopt one that's fairly accurate, that, for example, to get into that California fire-wise community? I'm thinking about that map issue.
yeah, I don't think anything like that is going, my belief is that will not be an issue. As I mentioned, they have aerial imagery of every home where they give each home a score for the likelihood of a wildfire in the area and the likelihood the house will burn if there is one. There's so much technology going on now that with their mapping, that the local activity of mapping is, I don't think that's gonna be, insurers looking to get a hold of that. So they can non-renew someone.
For the fire-wise community, we could have that something adopted to qualify for a fire-wise community.
There is a mapping issue of your territory.
When my insurance was non-renewed, this AAA, they gave me a rating. It was a 2N, which seemed really quite low. I said, well, what was it? I wanted to get details. They had no details. I talked to the local folks. I talked to headquarters. I called around. Can I protest it? Said, you can protest it, but we're not gonna change it. When I got into the fair planning, I found, they were using data on my home. It was originally built in 74. In 2000, it was completely remodeled, new roof, new sides, and
Complete not
they did, and they kept, it brought up old data. And I tried to keep updating the data.
So you need to report that to the department. They'll look into that. Because they make mistakes. I had somebody come up to me at an event. They said they lost their insurance because there was a hole in their roof, but it was a solar panel. So, it happens. So file a complaint and they have to give you your score and the reasons that went into it. Now, as far as your 2N, it really depends on which risk score they use, because you can go from 1 to 10, or some go from 0 to 99. So they should give you that information. Yeah.
Yeah, so that is something. Mary Beth mentioned that insurers have to give you these 4-time notices about your risk level. They can't just be telling you a letter and a number, right? They need to explain what the score means. And realistically, if they're any kind of institution, apparently they weren't, but they should explain what is within your control to change it. I will say, with the first slide I showed with the 2 red circles at different places, that they were using satellite imagery, slope, close to brush, and access. There probably was nothing to have changed one of those scores when they were using that broad information. But with the now more granular aerial imagery they use, there are things in their scores that in more detail, many of them within your control, like the tree limbs over the roof or the type of roof, and they need to tell you what about your score you could amend. So otherwise it's
So
it undermines the
I
law.
don't get the detail on what it was that gave me.
4N or whatever,
Well, how do I?
all the Department of Insurance. What else is he?
Okay, I've heard from different groups of homeowners at times that they've done everything the insurer has asked for and they still haven't been renewed. And that's when you call the department and file a complaint.
Theoretically, if you qualified for coverage, you should be written new policy or a renewal policy, right? So if they tell you the reason you're being non-renewed is you have a wood shake roof and you put on a Class A roof before the expiration date, there's a law that says insurers have to be unfairly discriminatory in their underwriting. So if they write Class A roofs, they have to write your Class A roof. Your house now is a Class A roof. They don't always do that. And I think they sometimes call it a moral hazard because you didn't change the thing until we pointed it out. Like you might have done with your teenagers at some point, if they don't clean up the roof. But realistically, in my view, and I don't know if the department will defend it, but if you now qualify for renewal, the reason they cited is no longer an issue, they should be renewed. Which is the point of you getting a 75-day notice. But if they gave you a 10-day notice, you'd have no time to do these things. The purpose is to allow you to address it or complain that they're wrong or find another carrier. If you can address it, you should address it nicely. And the department, to me, should enforce that obligation.
Changing topics. I wanted to ask about the surplus lines. We really didn't talk about them much, and they seem to big the fair plan. And here in town, there are quite a few very expensive homes, so the fair plan probably is not enough. And that was one question. And the other part of that was also how does one evaluate a surplus line? Because a lot of them are actually the same company. And they're the same parent company of many of the names we've heard of, they have a secondary line. And so why would I think that, I'll just pick Allstate, I don't know if they have a surplus line. And if I went to Allstate as a surplus line, how risky would that be if Allstate's have been a carrier?
Yeah, I did touch on it. I don't know a whole lot about surplus lines other than they are not backed by the California Insurance Guarantee Association and the rates aren't reviewed by the department for approval. So my only point I could offer is that you need to look at the financial rating of any surplus lines insurer, because that is your only real guarantee of security that they will pay your claim if you have it. The most common known measurement of surplus lines financial strength is AM Best's. It gives it a letter grade, A being the best or A plus. And generally speaking, the common advice is don't go below a B plus rated insurer if you can help it, right? If you can get one of those. I do find that going to a surplus lines broker, sometimes, and particularly for homeowner associations, they end up doing a pooling of the values where 3 insurers will take a share of the total values. And unfortunately, as I understand it, the way surplus lines works, if one insurer would take a third for 10,000 and one would take it for 15,000 and one would take it for 20,000, then they all agree they'll take it for 20,000 each. So they agree to take whatever the highest one is, which is of course an advantage to the two that would have done it cheaper, but that way everybody's charging the same. So you want to have as few surplus lines insurers on a risk as you can, but the only reassurance I can give you is to look at the financial rating. There's really no other, to my knowledge, guarantee of performance if there was a total loss.
All right, thank you. Full disclosure, I'm an insurance broker. I really appreciate the presentation tonight from the Department of Insurance and United Policyholders too. I've liked the work you've done over the years, so appreciate you coming out tonight. And my question is, once the regulations are passed, it promises every year we're going to go through the process of approving regulations. How much pushback there may be from consumer groups? I mean, there are certain consumer groups that perhaps will push back just for transparency. You foresee problems with that in getting the regulations passed?
Well, transparency is important to us as far as the cat modeling. When we've had all these public hearings, that was the #1 thing that was a complaint from the public, was they want us to be able to know how these models are created, who's going to trust, how can we trust them. The insurance commissioner has worked with Cal Poly Humboldt, and they are starting a public model that would probably take about 5 years to create, and they'll be working with the other universities throughout the state to work on this project. But in the regulation, which hasn't passed yet, so it's all a little nebulous right now. But there is going to be a oversight of the cat models. There's going to be a specialist that is going to be able to look at things that are more proprietary, that the department will be able to, but will be trusting this panel. I don't know if it's a person or a panel, will be overseeing this. So we'll see how that comes out once the regulation is adopted.
Yeah, I think it's a panel of 5 to 6 people to make a more public forward kind of process and to avoid the interventions of consumer groups. But
And they are going to put some restrictions on the consumer groups that if it's something that we're already working with the insurers about, that it's going to be hands off for them. Right. So we're not slowing down the whole process with the approvals.
Yeah, thank you, Mary Beth and Joel. This has been really informative and we appreciate you coming out of all this way for it. Joel, you had mentioned fuel load as one of the risks that is taken into consideration, and you mentioned trees and brush. But what about building density and building separation? I believe someone in our neighborhood actually got told it was due to density. What can you speak to?
Yeah, I don't believe that density is a measurement of, these wildfire risk models, personally, density of housing. And I could be wrong. Typically, insurers deal with density itself by avoiding over concentration of homes in a given community. Now, obviously, if a wildfire rushes through, even that level of focus might be undermined. But to my understanding, density of homes, boy. Well, I'm gonna say, I can't weigh in to say no either. I gotta believe it's realistic. Anything that's real as a consideration, objectively speaking, is likely to be something that we use. So, Mary Beth and I did a presentation in Chamaquita Park. I was talking about earlier in the San Luis Mountains. And we drive, off of Highway 17 down a very narrow road and off into this community that has even more narrow roads and very densely packed together. So I would say, looking at that, I would say very hard for them to get insurance. So part of it is not only the density, but potentially the access. So if, you can still get fire equipment and such into the area, I think it's still going to have a shot at coverage despite the density. But if we get into little narrow lanes and such, then it's more troubling.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I'm taking notes madly. And I would love to have access to your slides. I did notice in the agenda for our Wednesday town council meeting that we'll be making adjustments on our building codes to be less fire resistant. Is that true? So I encourage everyone to.
Not correct.
Okay,
No.
so if we can read what the changes are to the building codes, I would love to get more description on these. Maybe.
Do you have resources on, does any of the insurance links that you've been presenting have links to information on building codes specifically, or is there a commentary you have on how well jurisdictions are doing with their building codes to keep pace with what, the insurance industry would like?
I don't know, at uphealth.org, there is a set of information to be wildfire prepared by county. I don't know if there are any code information there, but we do have county by county materials on the webpage. You could try there, but otherwise I don't know. I will mention just an interesting thing that actually is mentioned to one of the attendees here. This town of Orinda, which is adjacent, I live in Moraga on East Bay. The town of Orinda is considering adopting a code that would require insurers to have a non-combustible attachment to the home where the fence comes in. So your wooden fence wouldn't be able to come and attach to your home, which is basically how every house in suburbia is commonly linked together. And including my home. I still have a wooden gate on both sides, despite knowing better. But I'm hoping that we start seeing that Arinda code will inspire people to come up with more at scale, less expensive ways to replace wooden gates with a not super expensive metal option that people are happy with. On our monthly meetings we have for wildfire preparedness, RAP meetings, if you look at our website, WRAP. There are people have posted, they put up wrought iron gates or this or that, but people still want the privacy of the wooden gate, for example, right? You can't see through wooden gates. So I'm hoping that there will be new innovations in creating wooden sections of fences that are affordable to common suburban homeowners and not, just high-end kind of options. But I think we're going to see a lot of building codes change, both in terms of materials used in the home, but concentration of housing maybe going against, with the exception being the multi-unit housing that communities are going for.
So I noticed on the map that you put up for the California Sustainable Insurance Strategy rulemaking that it looked like San Mateo County was not going to be included in your in the rule. So I'm just wondering what strategies we should expect for the rest of the counties that aren't included.
I think we may have covered this earlier, but we're hitting the counties that are most distressed, depending on the percent. And then I think when those risks start coming down and people start doing the work, it'll start to filter down to the other counties because there'll be less risk for the insurance companies or they'll be having the increased rates to cover their losses. Do you have any comment on that thing?
Yeah, I would say that the fact that they're going to be able to use projections of wildfire losses and passing the reinsurance costs. Those two changes alone there's an expectation that will inspire insurers to write a lot more in areas they aren't, despite, the obligation to write higher risk stuff. They're going to write some of the moderate and higher risk business they were writing before, but didn't feel they got the money to pay for it.
And they're also expecting the smaller companies that really aren't writing much in the woolly areas at all to take a little chunk out of that as well.
Because of their
So we're typically in the past, people have been able to come up to ask questions afterwards. But we are going to wrap it up now because people have to make a drive. Could we have a round of applause again? And thank you, Vice Mayor Haskell, for And just one last comment on some of the questions. So if you are all interested, I know that Senator Becker this year had introduced legislation that would require insurance companies to take into account mitigations that people did to their property. Unfortunately, that legislation did not make it through the legislative process. So if you're interested in that, if that's something that you're supportive of, I really encourage you to reach out to his office and let him know that. So that he would be interested in bringing that again. And then in my earlier comments, I do want to acknowledge, while we're asking the governor and the insurance commissioner to declare a state of emergency, we also want to say are very appreciative of the work that's being done by the insurance commissioner and the governor now to get that rulemaking process done. And so I didn't want to leave without saying thank you for that. Thank you all for coming this evening. It's a pleasure to see a community come together and rally around an issue like this and become informed. And hopefully what I would ask, the only ask I have of you is that if you have a neighbor, share the information. Thank you.
Okay, here we go. Your time.